Hey everybody, welcome back. I appreciate you guys joining me for another video. Today I'm going to be talking about something that's probably mostly for the newer gun owners out there, but even, lifelong gun owners who know a good bit about guns and have been around guns their entire lives may not know some of this stuff. So I wanted to kind of put some information out there for y'all. First of all, if you are a new gun owner and you just joined the Second Amendment community for the first time, welcome. Thank you for taking advantage of your Second Amendment rights and for making the choice to defend yourself and your loved ones. That's a very significant decision, and I and many others welcome you into this community that we have. But a lot of people out there, to include many of the new gun owners, have bought handguns, specifically more modern striker-fired styles of handguns. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the myths and misconceptions around carrying a gun, specifically carrying a handgun on your person or in a purse or whatever you end up deciding. By the way, please don't carry in a purse. Please don't. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So, a lot of misconceptions about carrying a handgun. My dad is actually a really good example of this. For years and years and years, he would either keep a handgun in his vehicle or sometimes he would carry it on his person, on his body. And he would always carry with an empty chamber. And I remember when I first started carrying, I would do the same thing because there's this huge fear of the gun, just going off, or somehow the trigger gets pulled. If it's in a good holster, it won't, but I digress. Somehow the trigger ends up getting pulled, or you fall down, or you bump into something and it makes the firing pin hit the primer and the gun goes bang. Like, there's this fear that is based off of a lack of understanding. And that's not a negative against anybody out there. If you don't understand how a firearm works, that just means that either you haven't done the research yourself and found the information, or somebody hasn't taught you that information. Not a negative thing. Not everybody geeks out on the mechanical workings of a gun and stuff like that. But I'd like to put the information out there in a very simple way for you guys today. And I'll lead off with a story, now that I've kind of given you guys the background on my dad and his carrying of a gun. He came to visit me almost a year ago now, actually. I think it was for Thanksgiving. And we were sitting down here, actually. He had a couple of guns he wanted me to do some work with and fix a couple of little things, nothing crazy. And I was doing that. And as we're talking, he knew I carried with a round in the chamber, and we're talking about how guns work and why I carry with a round in the chamber, why he still was too afraid to, and all this stuff. And since I already had a couple of guns apart, I started showing him the things I'm about to show you guys, and it completely changed his mind to now he carries with a round in the chamber all the time because he understands his gun and how it works well enough to trust it with a round in the chamber. So let's get up a little closer on this gun. We're going to go ahead and take it apart, and I'm going to show you guys a few safety features that are built into most, but not all, modern handguns. So let's go ahead and just get started with that. Alright guys, so I've got my Glock 26 field stripped here, and I want to show you a couple of different features, safety features built into every single factory Glock out there, as well as many other modern handguns. But again, not all of them have these kinds of features. We're going to start off with the frame here, and yes, that's a homemade stipple job, so you can just ignore that. But I want to talk about this little dingus here. That's the technical term. It's not actually the technical term. But this little protrusion here that sticks out from the trigger, that is an inertial safety. So the job of that is when the firearm is loaded, the trigger will be forward like this versus back like that after it's been fired, assuming it doesn't cycle, which it should. I digress. The job of this little piece of plastic right here is so that if your firearm gets dropped straight back, the weight of the trigger cannot cause the firearm to go off, essentially. If you notice, when I pull on the trigger, as long as I don't touch that little piece of plastic, it won't move. I have to actually disengage that little piece to make the trigger move. Which means that since the little plastic piece, the thin piece inside there, doesn't weigh nearly as much as the trigger, it's not going to be forced to move by the dropping of the gun, whereas the outside part of the trigger might be caused to, depending on height, drop angle, all that good stuff. So that's your first big key safety that you don't need to worry about, or gives you the ability not to worry about carrying with a round in the chamber. If you drop your firearm, it will not, unless there is a mechanical breakage of some sort, fire from the trigger being pulled by the force of momentum. Now, that being said, there have been cases, and I've never seen it personally, of aftermarket triggers that will cause the gun to fire if it's dropped because they weren't machined properly, the tolerances aren't right. Also, messing with some of your internals back here can do that. But with a stock firearm, that shouldn't be an issue on a Glock, a Smith & Wesson, M&P, a XDM, several others. I won't name all of them because I don't have experience with every single handgun. But that's what that little dingus is, if you've ever wondered about that. Now let's move on to the next piece of this safety puzzle we're going to be talking about, and that is the firing pin or striker block. Now, what that does is, you can see here, this is the back of the striker that actually sends the tip forward through the breech face right there to actually hit the primer and detonate a round. If I push on this as hard as I can, it still won't come through that breech block until, let me grab a little tool here, make this easy, until I disengage that little firing pin block, or in this case, striker block. Once I push down on that, watch the breech face right there. See how now I've got a firing pin pushing through? I pull it back, the safety re-engages, it won't go through again. Disengage it, boom, there it goes. So what that little thing right there prevents is the firing pin from being able to come forward at any point and come into contact with the primer unless you've pulled the trigger. And how this works mechanically inside the gun is, you've got your trigger here. It's connected to this trigger bar running along the side all the way to the back, that little silver piece. The trigger bar has this protrusion coming up from the top. So as the trigger moves, it moves rearward. That protrusion is what pushes up on that striker block to allow the striker to go forward. Not just striker fired handguns have this feature. The Beretta 92 series, for example, has a firing pin block. The PX4s from Beretta, again, way too many guns to name. The vast majority of all modern handguns have features like this. They have something to prevent the trigger from being pulled by the inertia of a fall, and they have something to prevent the firing pin from being able to move forward and contact the primer without the trigger being pulled. But again, not every handgun has that, so make sure you do your research on your firearms before you make a purchase if this is something that matters to you. Now, of course, there are other safety mechanisms on other firearms that we can talk about later, but these are two of the most prominent and two of the most significant to talk about with regards to carrying with a round in the chamber. So let's go back up top and talk some conclusions now. So there you have it, guys. That's the basic principles of the safety mechanisms of one of the most popular handguns out there. Of course, there are other guns. As I've said, not every gun is going to be designed the same way. Not every gun is going to have these same safety features, but the vast majority of modern guns do. We've come a long way in terms of metallurgy. We've come a long way in terms of engineering and mechanics and making sure that things are designed to be as safe as possible, yet still work when you need them to. A few other safeties, we'll call them, out there for handguns that you may find on some of the options you're looking at, or you may have on some of the guns you own. Manual safeties, some sort of lever or button that you have to move in order to be able to fire the gun. It just mechanically blocks the trigger from being able to move in a firing motion such as this. Okay. magazine safeties or magazine disconnects are my absolute least favorite kind of safety ever, but those are also options. The idea is that if you, and this gun is clear, has been safety checked, but this is a loaded magazine. If your magazine in your firearm were to somehow come out just a little bit, just that little millimeter, I'll show it a little closer so you guys can see, just that much, that the firearm will now not go bang. There's a mechanical disconnect in there that the magazine, basically think of it like completing a circuit. Like you turn a light switch, it completes a circuit, turns the lights on in your house, provides energy to the light bulbs. Okay? Now imagine that magazine is in a firearm that has a magazine disconnect safety, is your circuit completer, it's your light switch. It moves the mechanical parts on the inside into position to allow the trigger bar to function correctly and fire the gun. A lot of 22s have these. Actually, every single 22 pistol I own had one of these before I fixed it. It came broken from the factory. It wouldn't go bang without a magazine in it, so I fixed it. That's a thing to consider and to think about with some of these guns. A lot of people feel that's a very great safety thing, because what if I get into a fight and, you know, in that fight the bad guy takes my gun, but somehow in the process of us fighting and rolling around, the button got pushed and the magazine came out a little bit and he tries to shoot me. Now he can't shoot me. Well, that's a whole lot of ifs that you got to depend on. Not to mention the bad guy not seeing, you know, John Wick or pretty much any action movie and just going, huh, or any kind of training for that matter, and now they can shoot you again. Like, no, I want my gun to go bang when I want it to, even if the magazine did happen to fall out in that fight. I digress. You make your own choices. You are the best equipped to make your own decisions, but I hope this video at least gave you some more information about the safeties built into most modern handguns, and give you a little bit of a sense of peace at possibly carrying the round in the chamber if you've never been comfortable doing that before, or at the very least now you maybe understand the mechanical workings of your firearm, whether it be a new gun or an old gun, particularly if you have a Glock like I do. That's really about it, guys. Just an informational video for those out there that want to learn and want to, you know, improve their knowledge base on firearms. I won't advocate one way or another for you to carry with a round in the chamber. There are certain instances where it makes sense not to. You have to make that decision for yourself. I personally carry with a round in the chamber with all of my handguns as long as they are on my person. That is my steadfast rule. But anyway, if you guys have any questions about anything in this video, please feel free to either comment down below, send me an email, or send me a DM on Instagram. I love having conversations with my audience. I love the feedback and the back and forth. I love hearing what you guys have to say too. If you have any experiences with aftermarket triggers and a firearm drop firing, or any other information to add to what's in this video, I'd really appreciate it, guys. Let's have a conversation about it. Thank you guys so much for your support and your love. I really can't tell you enough how much it means to me. You guys are the reason the channel exists. You're the reason that I do this, and I couldn't and wouldn't do it without your support. So again, thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Y'all take it easy, roll tide, and I'll see you later.